the Antichrist to come and take the world for Lucifer. And the last line of that, quote, prayer is, let light and love and power restore the plan on earth, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Which I had already learned from reading the Bailey books, that meant sealing Jews, Christians, and Muslims off into their own separate place. And basically they were going to be the phoenix that would arise from the ashes to build a new civilization. Delegates came back. The crowd was starting to thin out. It was getting close to 11 o'clock at night. He'd started at 6 p.m. at night. I guess folks had to go to work. And the woman that stood next to me, very prim, little black lady, very neat, very trim. And she looked like she could have been an activist in any Black Baptist church in Detroit, head of the altar committee or something. And I turned to her as gently as I could. And I said, I hope it does not offend you, but I will not be reciting the great invocation with you. I will say my own prayer. She said, no, honey, that's all right. We all have our own paths to God. And I said, the reason I will not say the great invocation is the scripture said very clearly the Antichrist would come and deny that Jesus was the Christ. I said, Benjamin Creme has denied it fervently all evening on behalf of this Maitreya character. And the woman said, there's been many Christs. I said, there's been one. His name is Jesus. And they turned from rows around and looked at me like I was from outer space. This is the church that the same area where Marianne Williamson later went to become guru and head of a large Michigan Unity church. And many of the same people were in attendance. And this was the Palmer Park church. She took the Warren church. At any rate, Benjamin Creme came in, and he promised the group they were going to recite the great invocation, and then he was going to have a transmission from Maitreya the Christ as soon as that thing was over. But they would say the great invocation first. And his literature said he'd been overshadowed by Maitreya the Christ everywhere and delivered a message. They started from the point of light within the mind of God, may light stream forth, and I went nice and clear, and all the acoustics in that room were wonderful. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And I did that every single stanza. And they got down to the last part and said, let light and love and power restore the plan on earth, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. And I said nice and clear, may Jesus Christ return to earth and end the evil present in this room tonight. Well, the funniest thing happened, or may I say it didn't happen, and this was the spookiest thing of the whole evening. Benjamin Creme waited and waited and waited. It was clear he was not faking it. He was waiting for something to happen that never happened. This thing did not come and overshadow him. He dismissed the crowd and said, that will be all. We went out, and of course everybody's glaring at me. And Dan Butts, the one who was the master of ceremonies for the evening, glared at me. And another one said something sharp to me in Dan Butts' presence. And I said, if your new Maitreya the Christ, Betreya the Christ, or whatever his name's supposed to be, were everything he was cracked up to be, one lousy Christian in the room reciting the Lord's Prayer shouldn't have stopped him. And we honestly thought things were going to happen. They were running ads in their magazines. They were publishing books. They really thought they were going to carry it off. And their magazines had ads, expect the Christ in the spring of 1982. And they thought things were going to happen on the day of the syzygy, March the 10th, 1982. And it was weather-wise, it was a disastrous day for the Detroit area. I drove my son to school, and we went through some floods to get there. And he read me an article from the Detroit Free Press by a reporter I had noticed had written many pro-New Age articles. In fact, the day after Benjamin Krem spoke, there were headlines in the Free Press with the same Dan Butts picture, hand in hand through the New Age. And she said, "Zoom, not doom." And she said this syzygy was a great thing. It meant maybe even a new Messiah was on his way. I was so depressed, so discouraged. The weather didn't add to my mood. She said that all these things were taking place this day, that even in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is my hometown, that a man, John Davis from Wyoming, Michigan, would be giving a talk for the Coptic Fellowship, the 3 stages of the Christ reappearance. And I thought there's just no way to stop this. And I looked at that paper all day, and finally that afternoon, I picked up the phone. I don't know why. I picked up the phone and I called the Detroit Free Press. And I asked if I could please speak to the reporter who wrote the article. It was Ruth Seymour's byline. And they said she was unavailable. I left word, said I'm an attorney in downtown Detroit. I would like to speak to her. I have some material that might be of interest. She called me back approximately 15 minutes later. And I was going to say something very sharp to her, but she sounded so scared I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I said, "You've written several articles about the New Age movement." She said, "Yes, I have." I said, "How would you like to see the flip side of that movement?" She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I've examined it carefully. It's identical to Nazism." She said, "Why do you say that?" And I quoted the Foster Bailey passage I read about Europe. And then I said, "They're using 666 and calling it a sacred number." She said, "Oh, creepy." I said, "I lecture on this every other week at St. Genevieve's School in Livonia." I said, "If you like, I would be very happy to make a copy of my lecture notes outline for you. And you can check my references for yourself and see if I've been accurate." She said, "No, if it's all right with you, I would like to come over to your office right now and look at your materials." I said, "Fine." She came in. She looked like one of the original flower children left over from the 60s. And I'm not saying that to put her down. And we started going through them, and she went, "Wow, wow." She was noticing things I wasn't noticing. And she said, "Look at this, look at this." And she finally said, "Why did you decide to call me today?" I said, "I really don't know." She said, "You must," she said, "knowing what you know about this," she said, "you had to have been only angry at my past work." I said, "Yes." She said, "I'll bet you thought of writing letters to my editors." In fact, I and every other attorney in the office, both Christian and Jewish, were going to write those letters. Several times we'd thought about a writing campaign, a serious writing campaign. She said, "I'll bet you thought of writing letters to my editor." And I said, "Yes, I thought of it." She said, "Well, it's a good thing you didn't. I wouldn't have listened." And then she persisted some more. She said, "What made you decide to call me today?" And I finally said, "Ruth, I really can't explain it." I said, "But I was looking at your article, and all at once I felt it very important that I talk to you immediately." She said, "You don't know it," but she said, 15 minutes before you called, I went to the ladies' lounge of the Free Press. She said, and I knelt down on my face, Eastern style. I probably called her around 3:15, and it was 3 o'clock that they were going to go do their group, whatever, meditations to invoke the Christ that day. She said, "I got down on my face, flat on my face, Eastern style, and I was going to pray to Buddha." She said, "All at once I changed my mind. I prayed to Jesus." She said, "And I prayed that he would send me revelation." She said, look, now I have revelation. And she left my office a brand new Christian that night. And she then was determined that I should